Welcome in, friends and neighbors. Thank you very, very much for deciding that you just had to have me in your ear at this moment of your life. It makes my day. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Now, who am I? I am Garden Mama. For those of you who don't tune into gardening shows until it's March, hey, we've been waiting for you. Come on in. I'm here to answer your questions or attempt to. I'll give you some ideas about gardening or attempt to. Occasionally argue with you or attempt to, and mainly fill in between your questions, your texts, your phone calls, all those wonderful things that you're kind enough to send to me. This has been quite a week. I don't know about y'all, but I'm about as tired of up and down temperatures as I can get. The tomatoes in their little hats are now finally casting away. This last night was the last one for them in Zone 8. It dipped down just below 40 at my house. Colder inside my house than outside, which is one of those things. But this is time. They're growing. Their stalks are thick, and I'm very happy that I went ahead and planted them so that I could, even if I had to baby them for a couple of weeks, they're coming along just fine. So appreciate you very, very much for tuning in today, and I look forward to hearing from you. Got lots and lots of stuff going on this morning, and I have to tell you, today is, of all things, Poetry Day. Don't worry. I'm not going to start reciting. But it did remind me of a very early program, not in this world, but in another world, where I used to function and do garden radio. But there was a lot of time to fill, and there was a whole lot of space to fill. And frankly, sometimes, poetry just really does work for me. I'm pretty sure I actually started an Arbor Day program in those days from Joyce Kilmer's very early 20th century poem, I Think That I Shall Never See a Poem Lovely as a Tree. But it does remind me that this is also the International Day of Forests, and I wanted y'all to know that there's a great new book out. I'm looking forward. I've only read excerpts. I'm looking forward to reading the whole thing. My garden writing friend Pam Beck recommends it, and trust me, when she recommends it, it's going to be a great book. It's called Good Nature, and it's by Kathy Willis. She is a professor at Oxford University, and before that she was at Kew Gardens as the director of botany there, I believe, or some other really exalted position in my world. This is called the Good Nature, the New Science of How Nature Improves Our Lives. We have heard for years, you go back and you say, yeah, Mama just said go out and play, or Daddy just said don't come in till the street lights come on, or whatever it was. And the whole idea was to play outdoors, to be outside. And it does make you a better person. It's okay to come back and see if you have messages on the phone. It's okay. If somebody really needs you, they will catch up with you in short order. But some time spent in the company of trees and shrubs and plants and nature as a large concept and a small concept, it all works out better for you. And now we have some studies that will indicate to us exactly how that works. So I'm going to bring those to you over the next period of time. But lucky for you, I will not recite today. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. And that's the end of that long poem about trees. And I'm telling you, Lance, you didn't know me then. But this was
poetry days?
No, I'm still in poetry days. But this was so long ago that I actually started a radio program on Arbor Day with that poem from Joyce Kilmer. Lots of empty air in those years. Now, that being said, we're so happy that we have this wonderful text line. I trust that the issues y'all have been discussing back and forth are now cleared up, and everybody can start sending me their questions.
I went and checked everything, and all the stations seem to be working with one voice now.
With one voice.
I did get
we do
a note
appreciate
from
that.
Joel and Natasha saying we had some overlap. We made a mistake on the recording. Profuse apologies. They're such nice folks, and so I think there may have been an extra minute or that overlapped or something in there. I didn't hear it until I walked back there, and I was like, uh-oh. So I think
there they go. Well, we appreciate y'all being on top of it.
And Mike was the first. Mike, hippie, thank you. Yeah,
yes, thank you very much. Appreciate it. David says, somebody fixed it. That would be Lance, of course.
I don't want to take credit for anything.
Trust me, it wouldn't be me. We don't take blame or credit too much.
Exactly. You got to be careful when you take credit.
Be very careful about these things. Well, this was, you'll be happy to hear that today is Healthy Fats Day, but I think that Lance and I have both had healthy fats all week.
Man, what a great little jaunt to a bakery that was.
Yeah, we went, y'all have heard me talk about Just Vanilla and Guillermo, and they were part of the Bottle Tree Tour last year, and he, of course, has baked on your television on Food Network and done really, really, really super well there. But it's really much more fun to go in and see the baking going on and get a bite to eat, and frankly, enjoy it way too much.
It was so good.
He's really good.
Yeah, I'm still stunned and in shock a little bit. At
Good.
If you're a croissant fan, which I am, it had many layers of
many
and butter and
many.
So I had to go back 2 or 3 times and buy more stuff.
Walked out with a box full of goodies.
Definitely worth it.
So that's the whole thing too about just spending some time. We talk always about how there's too much to do, or there's not enough to do, or there's this or there's that. Look at time and expand it in your own mind so that you get to spend at least an hour of it with a friend of yours eating something silly good that neither one of you particularly needs, but everybody enjoys.
I needed it.
You needed it. Well, I'm sure I didn't, but I really did. I very much enjoyed it.
The oatmeal cream cookie.
Oh, how was that? That was also
delicious.
wonderful.
My dog's one of them about climbed up and sat on my head, the bird dog, while I was eating it. He was so excited.
Good.
Yeah, I don't know. I was like, I didn't know you liked this, but...
Well, see, you have found another, and this is the one, friends, that is tall enough to stand up on top of your head.
Yeah.
He literally could do that.
He's going to make a nest up there. I was like, man, there's not enough up top up there for a nest.
He'll make it. He'll bring it with him. It's okay. Today is also French bread day, so in case you want to continue down the carb highway,
Good idea. Just some butter and bread today.
There's nothing better than baguettes and butter. Oh my goodness. This is fun. Let's see. Ken's not tuned in yet, but he will be. Hello, Ken. Good to see you. This is these are the reduced price rack bulbs that he's sending to us. I love that. There's so many fun things to do. Beautiful hosta, and that's really nice. How many of these in a 4-inch pot? I have 3 rooted corms of each. I wouldn't put but 1 in a 4-inch pot. I might put 2 in an 8-inch, but 6 or 8-inch, but I wouldn't put but 1 in a 4-inch because hostas really do grow roots quickly, and you don't want them to be crowded because you want all the room for all the leaves on top and all the beautiful flowers that you're going to get. When you join us at SuperTalk.tv today, you will see some of my very favorite spring-type images. Some of them are current from my garden, some of them are from my neighborhood, and some of them are not. One of the ones that is not, which I'm very happy to tell you about, is a bamboo fence from that you won't necessarily recognize it because it doesn't actually look like classic bamboo fencing. It was made in and from the bamboo at the Portland Japanese Garden out in Oregon, and it's a lovely, lovely fence, but it's also a beautiful way to explain how bamboo turns into other things. So if you like the looks of that, you're probably going to appreciate, I don't know, some of that bamboo underwear that these y'all around here talk about all the time.
They say it's great. I haven't bit the bullet yet.
It's a big conversation, though. We have a birthday coming up. We'll see if we can't do that for you.
That's what Amazon's for.
I think I believe they'll send it to your house. That's right. They'll send it right over. But there's also a piece that I need to bring to your attention today. There's a beautiful jasmine on the on SuperTalk.tv growing over a door, and it's a lovely arch. It's in my neighborhood right around the corner from my house. I appreciate it so much because it is a bee magnet. Unfortunately, it can also be such structures as that can also be a wasp magnet. And since I have already seen 2 fairly healthy red wasps floating around on one of the warm days in my back garden, I wanted to remind you all that when you have vines, when you have dense plantings up close by your house, you do have to pay attention to what else might be living there. It'd be lovely to have a bird's nest, perhaps, not so great to have a wasp. So pay attention to those things. Oh, fun.
He was out and about.
Well, they have work to do, too.
Yeah.
For the
he got caught by.
For the most part, they have things to do.
He didn't know where he was. Walking through.
Well, you definitely have the
two cats and two dogs.
I was going to say you have the patrol back there.
Patrol, and Butterscotch is always on patrol. He's a guard cat and 24/7. So he didn't. Didn't make it far, but it made you realize it's time. If you've had stuff that hadn't been turned over in a little while, there may be some critters under there.
Yeah, and always, there's so many things that I don't think anybody ever told me. My grandmother absolutely preached about wearing gloves when you gardened because she knew somebody that had gotten a terrible sickness from, there was a cut on their hand they didn't even know was there, and they got something in it that was in the soil, and they got real sick. That does happen. It's rare, but it does happen. But it does point to, especially if you pay for your manicure, you really want to wear gloves when you go in the garden so that you can keep everything intact, as it were. But it's also true that she would tell us that you keep a stick by things like those pots that you haven't turned over in a few days or a few months or a few years in some cases.
I have a couple of bamboo canes I use
make sure that you do that for that. I don't think it's what they first used a shillelagh for, but, this being St. Patrick's Week, I probably ought to mention that would be perfectly handy. You can have a cane. I have a baseball bat that I take out with me and flip things over when I need to do that. But it's just important that you realize you're in nature because you want to be. You don't need to let it scare you. You need to have a certain level of control, and that has to do with where you put your hands. And frankly, if you're in a pair of sandals and you decide you're going to kick over some pots, trust me, those are going to be the ones that have fire ants in them every time. So give yourself a little break and do a bit better job. There's also some beautiful photos at supertalk.tv today. Plenty of pansies, and I see the snapdragons are starting and all of that. It's a really lovely, lovely time. We're going from the Lenten roses, into the pansies and the snapdragons taking center stage. And, of course, the daffodils have pretty well blown themselves out in most of Zone 8. But some of the rest of y'all still have plenty of those going on, too. I'll tell you what else is happening. The jasmines have bloomed and are blooming. The winter jasmine and the yellow jasmine and the white jasmine. Some of them are actually jasmines, but the point being that if it is a lovely, fragrant yellow or white small flower, we tend to call it a jasmine of some sort or another. And yes, it's Fragrance Day, so why not? I like that. I don't have any problems with that. I wanted to let you know a couple of things that are going on in the the science world today. I'm particularly intrigued by have you ever known anybody that had a parrot that could talk? I have, and it's quite disconcerting the first time that you walk in the room and the bird talks to you. But the New York University folks have been working in their schools of medicine to try and understand how the parakeet's brain actually helps it to mimic, because parakeets do that too, how it mimics the human words and how those things work. And they have specimens that they've gathered over the years. This is another one of those things, open the drawer in the natural science department and start seeing what's there and trying to understand things. And then, of course, because now we can scan things like birds in the drawer and birds in the wild, for that matter, we can compare how their brains are working when they're making various sounds. So I really love this. This is where we have to give bird brain an entirely different perspective, because there are pathways in these brains of birds that learn to speak that are only otherwise present, as far as we know, in humans. That's right. So if you think only God can make a tree, you're probably going to figure that only God could tell his parakeet to say such horrible things to me, but I don't know. They say they pick up what is said around them, but in some cases they literally do go on off and talk just in another set of words that you didn't even know they had ever heard. So it's a fascinating thing, and I'm tickled that the folks at both Langone Health and the Grossman School of Medicine there at NYU are working on this. Obviously, the reason for working on this is not just curiosity, although many things do begin with curiosity. It does take us into, if we can understand better how our brain forms speech, we may be able to help people who are not able to speak a little bit better. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to tell you that, the raccoon on the movie is going to show up at your house. But I do think that if we can make use of things that happen naturally, it always helps us. And in this case, the bird brain could be a key for us. I really think that's a great thing. I wanted to just mention briefly this morning that if you have ever enjoyed, used, seen a stack of copies of the Garden Tabloid, the original one from Mississippi State was written by the one and only Dr. Milo Burnham. He has left the earth, and send my love to his family. In my world, we say, may his memory be for a blessing, and there's no question but that it will be. So I appreciate people who let me know about that last night. If you're interested in his arrangements, they're available on social media. You can find out about all of that. One of those people that was just so smart, and I have a tiny story that I'd like to tell you. I love it when somebody who is full-grown and older than me learns something and is willing to say so. And in his case, he was trying to save seeds from spigula, from Indian pink. So he couldn't find them in the garden. They expelled their seeds, but he couldn't find any seedlings, couldn't find any seed. So he took the next set of flowers as they were ripening and put them in the house. Well, of course, woke up the next morning to the sound of explosions in the kitchen because they were shooting the seeds across the room. That's why he couldn't find them. They send their seeds 10 feet across your kitchen or your garden or, frankly, you're surprised whenever things like that. We don't always know everything. And when we learn something, it's great to share it. So hats off to Dr. Burnham. We'll be right back. You don't know things until you know them. I ran into somebody who said, you play this song on your show, and it sounds like they're saying, steer it up. Where are they going? Where are they steering to? And I had to explain that it's actually just a different... It's
Jamaican reggae.
It's an accent they're saying, stir it up. It means get going,
Stir it up. And I love the image you sent earlier in the week, or it may have been yesterday, the one where... The greatest way to gamble is with a spade and a pack of seeds. And it is so true. It is so true, though.
We are gamblers, and sometimes it pays off and sometimes it doesn't. But that's why local farms and supporting them is so important. It might be that you don't care a thing about growing your own food and you're just happy that you can go buy some. That's excellent because you're keeping the farmers in business. If you will make one more step and seek out the local farmers, you'll do the whole community a little bit more service and, frankly, eat better. So probably eat.
We need to do that, too.
Probably eat better would be the first thing to say. But anyway.
Well, and everything eats better if you eat better because you're growing stuff that feeds the chickens and everything.
I truly have experienced that.
Pyramid effect there. There's
a lot of things that I don't even like to eat, and when I grew them, finally I discovered that I did. Beets is the most famous one, probably. I had never seen a beet other than in a can until I got full grown.
Oh, that's what they look like.
And I don't like beets in the can. I mean, they're fine. Y'all enjoy them. That's great. But I don't. It's not my thing.
I have to go back to the bakery. I just want people to understand how much bread I bought. There was a chocolate croissant. There was a ham and cheese croissant. There was the oatmeal cream cookie. Yeah. There was a blueberry muffin. Yeah. I ate 2 croissants there. Layers of love. I couldn't pass it up. I know I'm missing something, too, because... Oh, and I walked away with socks, croissant socks.
You had croissants on your socks.
That's how impressed I was with this place. So if you can find it, you need to visit. I promise. I think you will be as impressed. If you're a pastry bakery fan like I am, the only people that get up earlier than me are
the bakers.
The bakers, and I have great respect for that.
And again, it's a case where when you're supporting a local bakery, you're supporting a local family and a local enterprise, and frankly, your tax base.
And they were delightful people,
all of it
too.
Helped. Oh, they're wonderful.
And there was
folks.
a party about to happen in that
Yes, they were. It's a very dynamic environment over there.
And I was going to say that's a fun place. There's a lot of great plants around the outside and all that, but the old Dueling Hall building, it was just so vibrant and active, and it was fun just kind of walking through it going, oh, yeah, this is here and that's there, and people everywhere. You always love to see that. I mean, especially this time of year.
My high school in my hometown was built at that same time and has that architecture, but it has been maintained as a school. Now, of course, they've had to add stuff to it and, put things out and do all this stuff, which they were even doing when I was there. But it is a beautiful architecture for moving people from place to place. And that's really what they do super well with, between the restaurants and everything else that's in there. It's just really a delight. Fun. So when you come to Jackson, folks, come to Dueling Hall.
It's kind of a feast for the senses, honestly.
Come and see us. Absolutely. There's a bunch of stuff that people talk to me about, and usually I don't have time because it's in the checkout line at the grocery store and somebody else is waiting to get out, or in the parking lot and somebody wants the space. That happened the other day. I'm sorry. Can we pull over here and I'll tell you about that? Well, we do that. And this morning, I'm really happy to tell you that Ellie in Florence is already thinking about next year. What a great thing to be doing. She says, I need a fast-growing evergreen shrub or a tree that would cast shade on my greenhouse in the winter. Most of the plants are either house plants or plants that grow in the shade, and they're getting too much sun this way. Okay, there's several choices, obviously, but in the faster growing world, things that are going to be really leafy in the middle of the wintertime, you do kind of have to go for that serious group of evergreens. Some of them grow faster than others, but you really can't beat something like ligustrum or clayera or pittosporum for that use because it's going to get fast and it'll get big in a couple of years. Elaeagnus, if you have room for it, that's another one that's going to get really big. But either way, whether you plant something out there or not, I'm suggesting shade cloth on the inside of that greenhouse. You can put it on the outside if you need to, if it can't be connected on the inside. But ordinarily, we find a way to put it up because that immediately cuts that sunlight in half on that side of the greenhouse. And you can get it in 50% shade. You can get it in 80% shade. There's a formula for every need. I would probably get 50% because houseplants generally can take some light, but not, they don't need to be in direct sun. So I would put up the shade cloth and then plant some stuff outside. I think that would probably be helpful. Good morning, Paula. I hope things are well in your world. Let's see. In this is a very good question. Last week, I transplanted strawberries into a 6-by-2-foot galvanized raised bed container with fresh soil. She's in Madison. He's in Madison. Should I be concerned about slugs appearing? And where do they come from? Well,
buddy, when they come out,
slugs,
they come out.
Yeah, slugs. Where slugs come from is that they do live somewhere.
There's another dimension
on your property, and they may be from another dimension. There's a portal there, though, underneath something that stays dark and cool. And in this case does not freeze because they don't actually freeze, they just kind of hibernate. But if you're putting these, this is one of those reasons that we always talk about keeping the area around the garden, around the raised bed, just a little bit cleaner than you might think is necessary, because there are places where critters can hide. And if there's something that's even just a board on the ground, pick it up with a stick, move it over. You may find that that's where you're having a nest of the slugs. So they're there all the time. But yes, they do come to things like raised beds if they have the opportunity to get there. It's harder for them to get in, but on the other hand, it doesn't take, once they're there, it's a problem because they really will start eating up those strawberries. So I would keep the area around the bed clear and just keep your eye out for them. Make sure that you that they're not in there, and if they are, that you get them out immediately. Yeah, I have to say, there's a lot of creatures on this earth, and I respect them, but I don't know why they're slugs either. I mean, I get they have a place in nature. I understand all that, but oh my goodness.
I haven't really figured it out. They love getting into dog food and
sure, and
leaving a slimy trail. But last year was the worst I've seen them in a condensed and confined area where they and going and trying to find a bed was very difficult. Very difficult. But they're there. And there were thousands of them, and I'd never seen it at that kind of infestation.
It's kind of frightening at that point.
What is this? Have you got an experiment going on down here? He's like, man, these things have taken over.
Bring the shovel.
Yeah, it was something.
Yeah, and don't drop them on your neighbors. That's not nice. And don't put them in the waterways. Nothing eats them. That doesn't help, I don't think. So anyway, somebody would say, well, then what do you do with them? You bury them someplace else that's too deep for them to get out of. That's what I have been told. I broke up one nest that was underneath a hot water heater in the back part of a piece of property, and it's like you're saying, Lance, there's so many there you can't believe that they're all there.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm kind of still going, wow, man, that was
give you a little bit of to make you step back a moment. But speaking of raised beds, I have a whole lot to say. You can imagine I have a lot to say about raised beds. I have one that I've had for so long, I'm now taking it apart. So it's a big problem to deal with them after about 20 years. So when you build a raised bed, count on it being there for a very long time. If you've decided not to expand the garden in the ground, because it really does seem like too much work and you don't have a tiller handy, raised beds may be for you because they're easier to put together and, frankly, easier to maintain. It only takes a little bit of shovel work because, I want that earliest, that soil that you build in the beginning is the very first of your scoop down into the actual soil that's underneath this bed, okay? So we're going to scrape all of the grass off, turn that over, and then begin building the bed. There's some simple strategies, really, that I have used with good success. Raised beds can be permanently sided. They can be semi-permanently sided. Some of the coolest ones I've ever seen had the opportunity to be unscrewed. They were not bolted. They were bolted together, not nailed. And as a result of being bolted together, they could be taken apart. So, for example, when you were growing garlic or when you were growing potatoes or something like that, you could more easily harvest them. But by taking the control that the raised bed gives you, you really do have a better opportunity. For example, you control the sunlight that the bed gets because you put it where you want it, but you can also put a cloche over it if you need shade. You can also cover up the soil if you want it to get hot faster, or you can put mulch on it to keep it a little bit cooler. And all of these things really do help customize your growing space. I particularly like 2x6s in 8-foot lengths for this process. Now, you can use rot-resistant wood. Cedar and cypress are wonderful. If you have the modernly treated wood, that has been accepted by gardeners across the country. But if you're using old wood or if you're using old cross ties or something like that, you need to paint first. And I mean several layers of paint because you don't want any of that stuff to leach into your bed over time. I really do like any width, to know that any width is possible, but I like a 4-foot wide bed simply because then you can reach from one side into the other, and it's much easier to handle. Here's what I'm going to do. Draw the outline of the new box on the ground, maybe with spray paint, maybe with string. Turn the native soil over just a little bit. Then toss each shovelful toward the center of the space and put in the corners of the bed. You can use 4x4 posts. I like those a lot, but you may have some other way to do that. There are plenty, of course, the structured ones that you just slip the boards into, and those are really handy. They work very, very well. But you need to set that first, and that gives you the opportunity to be sure that you're getting it where you want it and that you're going to be able to work the soil as you need it. Then you begin adding in your soils. We talk about that all the time. But then at the very end of it, you're going to turn the whole thing basically into a nice brown loaf of bread and put the sides on it. If you can put a corner piece, that's great. You'll have a place to sit. But if not, just mulch it up and get ready to plant. Raised beds are so great. They're so handy to have. Good question. Let's see. This is kind of hard to see. But I secured clear plastic down, was hoping to kill the Johnson grass. But it's looking like a greenhouse full of weeds. I can't tell if it's flat on the ground or not. You're right. I'm going to have to get up underneath there and see. 10 days is nothing, though, in terms of solarization, and the weather's not been really hot enough for it to do the job. So if it is, in fact, attached down to the end to the ground itself, which I can't tell if it's tight, you'll be able to get some results pretty soon when the weather heats up. I have no problems with that at all. No problem at all. There's also another really interesting thing about solarization. Someone was telling me that they discovered that they didn't have any fleas in that part of the garden. I don't know why that is. I don't even know. I think fleas actually like heat. but whatever they were living in got decimated, and so therefore the fleas didn't make it either. But I thought that was just interesting. I hear things from folks, and I think, well, that makes a lot of sense, and I thought I'd pass it along to you. Another question this week was about the difference between potting mix and potting soil. Generally speaking, the bags will have a mix name if they have more than one kind of organic matter, some fertilizer, and maybe even some polymers in it, maybe some sand, maybe some perlite. It's actually a mix of things. The potting soil itself is more likely to just have an organic matter source and then one thing, maybe some perlite, maybe some sand, but it's not going to be as diverse. And so therefore, it's probably going to stay a little wetter, which is handy for some things, especially small pots and whatnot. But remember, when we get into our world and we have so much rain at times, you have to really make sure you're not overwatering simply by the potting mix that you have used. This is also the case where do you store them? Well, you've got those saucers you've had in the house, in the kitchen, and you might want to put them under the kitchen sink or something. Do something with them. Don't leave your containers outside in saucers for the summer. That will end up having too much water in the bottom, and then the plant tries to take it back up. The water is, in many cases, toxic because it's been through the soil and has leached out a whole lot of the things that need to get out of there, as well as the air exchange. You don't want the plant to then immediately take that water back up. But it's also, frankly, going to overwater the pot. So be careful with that. Okay. Let's see, we've got some attachments. Oh, these are pretty, Paula. Those are lovely. Petunia Day over here. Really lovely. And a pretty bonsai that I'm jealous of because I'm not very good at that. I am not very good at that. Well, now, I know some folks are marching today in Jackson. We believe around here that whatever day you can celebrate something, you should. My mother used to say when everybody gets to town, it'll be Thanksgiving, no matter whether it's February or November. And in this case, it may be a little late, but we're gonna march today with our friends at the Howlin' Mouse. I think it still is. Sweet Potato Queens, all that stuff. It's a party, y'all. Now, we're glad you're here, but they're probably not even awake yet. We'll be right back. A friend of mine in Durham, North Carolina, has already got her tickets, and I'm jealous. This is the California Chocolate Drops, and they are reuniting for Rhiannon Giddens' Banjos. Let's see, it was Biscuits and Banjos Festival, which is happening in late April in Durham. The band has not been together for a period of time, but they're coming together to honor her and honor the work that they have done together to bring that music into the mainstream.
The California Chocolate Drops?
Carolina.
Oh, Carolina. Mm-hmm. That was a great name, either way.
Well, just Rhiannon Giddens, if you don't happen to know who that is, folks, when you hear the beginning banjo music on Beyonce's album, you're listening to her. You're listening to Rhiannon. She is just astounding. So talented. The group was famous, and she's even beyond that in terms of the world of that kind of music that I'm so fond of. We call it Carolina. We can call it bluegrass. We can call it old-timey. My grandfather would have called it traditional because it was his tradition. But it depends on what your tradition is, whether you think it's traditional, I suppose. Oh, my goodness. I'm going to go through the solarization wrap just because I have crawled up in this picture and I still can't tell exactly what the orientation is. But when we go to solarize, we're taking advantage of the heat of the sun and its ability to create the greenhouse effect through clear plastic. Clear is the only way to go for this particular process. Now, you cut everything down. You don't have to pull it up, but you do have to cut it down. Then you lay the plastic on top of it and secure it tightly around all the edges. Some people will dig a little trench and bury the plastic. Some people will come with bricks and just put them on top, to hold it down nice and tight. And that, in turn, also affects the amount of sunlight that comes through the plastic. Use 6 mil clear plastic. It does make a difference. 6 mil is thicker, and it has a better effect on those weeds that you're trying to get rid of. Excuse me. If I do it now, it's going to take till the middle of the summer for it to take effect. If I start up in June, it'll take till September. But if I start about July, again, by about September or the beginning of October, I will have done everything I can possibly, undo with that. And it will kill weeds to a depth, and seeds included, to a depth of 4 to 6 inches. In some cases, much deeper. But that you can count on that. Okay? Now, if your lawn has looked crummy for a couple of years, and let's face it, our lawns have been through some stuff. I was noticing I'm having another outbreak of false allium. That's the onion and garlic that doesn't smell like anything and really isn't useful. It's pretty white flowers. The pollinators like them, but there's too much of it, so I've got to get there and deal with that this year. But whatever it is that you got going on, you need to pay attention to the pH of the soil. And this is a really good time to test, because if you need lime, it isn't going to go to work immediately, but it will not. You'll be able to staunch some of the decline of the lawn, and in 6 months, your lawn will be really grateful that you put the lime out there. So get your soil test done now. The way to do that, if you've never had one, is simply go to your favorite garden center, go to Cooperative Extension Service, or look them up online, and you'll get a kit. And it's not expensive to send it back and have it tested. You tell them what you're going to grow. You send them the soil, take the samples as directed, and the next thing you know, you find out whether or not that is a problem of yours. On the other hand, if you know that your lawn is staying too wet, now's a good time to deal with that. I hate to say the 2 words French drain, but sometimes that's what it takes. Some friends...
And clean the crepe myrtle stuff out of them.
All of that. Some friends just found a French drain that no one even knew was at the house.
The French put in.
And I'm serious. And it literally had everything in the world in it except water flowing. So,
yeah.
It's something you have to be careful and take care of, try and maintain. Mine collapsed.
Yeah, rip it up and start over again sometimes.
Mine does need to start over again.
Moral of that story.
Oh, that's really pretty gloxinias and double pansies. That's pretty. Very, very pretty. Isn't that wild how flowers can do that? Goodness gracious. Peaches is sending us some fun stuff. Hey, George in Biloxi, thank you very much. You know how I love Highway, that particular highway. Me and Highway 90 have a long relationship.
It's a beautiful stretch.
Really, really
Such
beautiful.
Such a unique place, too. To me, the road, the highway being right up on the beach and everything, it's just a unique setting. It's so different in other places.
Yeah.
But you get such a picturesque view. Back in the day, I'm sure that was like one of the greatest experiences once you got the car and you'd pack up and head west or east on beach highway and see everything forever. There's nothing
of course, now there are a lot of places that you can't see the water from there,
right.
but not Biloxi and Gulfport.
Yeah.
But
they've maintained a lot of
those other
the
states.
Charm. Yeah, there's a lot of condos.
Now, I will tell you that my great aunt had a house on the highway, on the beach highway. Okay, and as homeowners, as landowners, they were responsible for the beach in front of their house. The city brought, there was not a white sand beach.
Yeah.
It was not that great.
Brought it in.
But once they did bring that in, and when I was a child, we had to rake it. And I'm
How
really.
cool is that,
I
though?
mean, it was our. You had to. And it was not limited access that I recall, because I remember there were lots of people on the beach all the time. But you literally had to take care of it. And one of the things after Hurricane Camille that I worried about was who was going to take care of the beach. I don't know why you think about that stuff, but you do.
Well, it's important. And my mother, they spent a lot of time on the back bay there. They'd run a house back there.
Love back bay.
And it was always a lot of fun. They do that in the summers. They weren't from far.
Best Italian restaurant I ever went to in my life, but that's another discussion. All right. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate you. Really beautiful morning, though, too, also. Y'all are so sweet. Really fun to see.
Yeah, there's been
Fun
a couple
day.
of pretty days. Wind has been there a bit, but it was cold last night. It was a little unexpected, but we talked about that, the potential
It just gets
for a snap.
a little snappy here and there. It sure does. And now
Easter.
we're looking at all the way through the second week of April. It's going to be basically spring weather, and then that's when we really have to think about it. But I didn't go out this morning to look at my blueberry flowers. It wasn't cold enough to hurt them, but I didn't go out to check on them either. So I think they're okay.
What are you looking for next as far as to open up, bloom, get rolling pretty well? Because your yard and garden look very strong for this time of year.
Oh, thank you.
So what is next, though? What is as far as blooming or what?
Really, the daylilies will be next. Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
They'll come along. Everything pansies and snapdragons and all that stuff is rocking. The daffodils have been lovely. I still have iris that won't bloom, y'all. So the iris look great,
they're so
but
stubborn,
they're not
aren't
going
they? Yeah, they're so healthy looking. Mine are, and I just don't have anything opening yet there.
Mike in Hattiesburg is sending us a buckeye. Now, my buckeyes are looking good. That's a beautiful one. I do love that plant. That's one of the natives that we don't think of enough. We don't. It's so ornamental and so pretty that we just don't realize we can actually grow it, but we certainly can. It's really funny. He's been awake a long time, y'all.
One of my favorite songs of all time. Puts me in a good mood. I was already in a good mood, so I'm going to be in a great mood.
I like it. Yeah. I like it. So I'll just be quiet and say, stick around. I don't care what anybody says. Y'all are the best audience in the world. This is so much fun. It's like we're on the porch someplace, y'all, and I've got my second cup of coffee, and you've got questions, and believe it or not, I have like answers to 5 texts that you all have presented me this morning. So that's pretty cool. Let's rock into all of this. Isn't that gorgeous? Those double flowers are just
What is this
killer.
I'm looking at?
Isn't that pretty? It's a double pansy.
It's so layered, and it looks like it's supposed to be eaten.
It does, and it really does have that kind of mushroom quality to it, because it's all folded up on itself.
And there's the other one, too.
And I thought at first that this is at SuperTalk.tv. In case y'all think we're just hallucinating, we're not. You can go to SuperTalk.tv.
I didn't eat any flowers this morning.
Not this morning. The good news is that those double flowers tend to resist storms a little bit better. So if they're open and they get rained on, usually they perk right back up, and that's a good quality.
Yeah,
Pansies,
hardy.
generally speaking, do well in our weather, but the doubles do have a nice rebound quality to them.
Wow.
Let's start with a few texts this morning. When to transplant buckeyes. We had just talked about some buckeyes in the previous
As in
segment.
the buckeye, like
the buckeye tree. When
isn't it poisonous or something?
Sprouted. No. Well, I mean, you don't eat them, but the plant itself is not.
Okay.
So the question is, when to transplant buckeyes? The answer is now. Here's what we're trying to understand. Buckeyes the seeds fall off the tree, the buckeyes themselves fall off the tree in autumn. If you leave them there, a lot of them will sprout and you can dig them right up out of the ground, but you also pick them up and start them into a 1-gallon pot halfway with leaves and soil in them. And then by now they've sprouted. So it's a good point in their life to transplant them because they grow really fast that first year. And if you're going to do this, by all means, make sure the buckeye has some afternoon shade. They're not a full sun tree by any means, and in fact, they'll burn up in a hurry if you don't give them that little bit of a benefit. The second one this morning is really interesting. Joe in Madison has elephant ears we've talked about before that have some difficulty with their leaves. They didn't quite fall off and they didn't stay either. So I told him just to leave them alone. And he did, and they sloughed off. But now it's soft right there at the point where the leaf comes out of the bulb. He wants to know if he should replace the bulbs. The answer is it depends on the bulb itself, because elephant ears can be soft in their edges and not be ruined. But if the whole bulb is soft, it's time to get a new one. If it's not, and it's just those tips where the leaves were, I would go ahead and let the whole business just sit there for a little while and see if we can't get it to sprout some new leaves. On the other hand, if you feel like it's staying too wet, this would be a great time to go ahead and dig that up. The third question, right quickly, is another bulb question. How to keep these bulbs? Are they one and done? Well, it's Asiatic lilies, and no, they are not one and done. In fact, they're coming up right now at this point in the year, and they do bloom over and again for several years, if not perpetually, in the perennial world. So all you need to do is make sure they have well-drained soil and about a half a day or more of sunlight, and those Asiatic lilies will be with you for a very, very long time. I appreciate that so much. I love that. Ooh, my gardenias are looking a little bit, she says yellowish gold. Mine have got a couple of yellowish leaves, too. This is not like the chlorosis. This is not where the veins are green and the rest is yellow. It's just a kind of a dulling. And it is actually a winter damage, but it's not serious, and they will recover. Certainly a little fertilizer at this point in the year won't hurt things either. And I really do appreciate this last question. Can I divide my rosemary now? The answer is no. Now, she's right. If you do it, you're going to take the whole thing out of the container and chop it in half. But why? If it's too big for the container, put it in a bigger pot, because this is really the time when the rosemary is putting on all of its juice for the year. And like so many of us, it doesn't like to be disturbed. So give yourself the opportunity to do those things. Jeff's got some really, really beautiful stuff going on. I love that. Everything. Oh, beautiful smells. You're absolutely right. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's so pretty. Wow. A lot to talk about this morning. Y'all have been really, really busy. And the gardens are showing it. I'll tell you what. I had the chance this week to see some of the prettiest loropetalums that I have looked at in I don't know how long. If you have not, if you don't like loropetalums, you don't like fringe flowers, think about it again, because you may have just seen some that stood there and looked like green blobs or even red blobs in some cases. But when they bloom in the springtime, this is the time to really appreciate them, but they will bloom over and over and over. And this, just like encore azaleas, we prune after the first flush of flowers in the springtime for loropetalum as well as for the anything else like that that's going to rebloom, but particularly encore azaleas. Roses that are going to rebloom, yes, we prune them as well. So that's really pretty, Jeff. Thank you for sending it. That's gorgeous. I don't know a whole lot about iguanas, Lance, but I'm fascinated by them. I don't know if I've told you that I know someone I worked with in radio here in central Mississippi actually had an apartment that was mostly an iguana house. He had a room and he had a bathroom.
I had a friend that had a big one.
The kitchen and the living room were all caged in for his iguanas, and they were the stillest creatures I believe I've ever been around for any length of time.
You don't know they're there until they do a off the top rope across and land it. And you're like, how did that thing?
How did that happen?
How did that?
Or until they in the wintertime when they fall out of the trees in South Florida because it gets too cold for them.
They just fall asleep.
They just conk out. Mm-hmm. They can't hold on anymore. So it's an interesting. Well, it turns out that being able to stand still for a long period of time is really a good thing. I don't know if you all saw this yesterday, but it's what made me think about the iguana. There's a video out there of a shark, and the drones are taking wildlife photos and whatnot, and this thing has something orange on its head. So they go in for a little closer look, like, that doesn't look right. What is it? Well, it was an octopus clinging to the head of the shark with all of its,
just the right spot.
All of its tentacles hanging on. And that made me think about the iguanas, because iguanas floated a fifth of the way around the world. They floated. That's the only way they could have gotten there. So University of California, Berkeley, they'll go back and reenact things like this.
Topwater lure.
They're the ones that originally established how we get back and forth, how Easter Island came to be like it is, because they went back there to see. But within the last mere 30 million years or so, this is the longest known transatlantic dispersal of any land animal. In other words, they don't swim. Okay, so they weren't going to jump off and have an opportunity to get there. The only iguanas outside of the Americas are in Fiji. Nobody brought them there. Nobody dropped them off. Nobody helicoptered them into the place. But a new genetic analysis shows us that they are most closely related to the North American desert iguana. They must have, because there's no other way for them to get there. However, there are, things that float that far. They've shown that over the years. The iguanas rafted 5,000 miles across the Pacific from western North America to Fiji. I want to know why.
Yeah, like what were they thinking?
This is not enough for me. I need to know.
Yeah, what's on the other side of that water? Exactly. I've got to find them. Didn't know that they were such deep thinkers.
I mean, I had no idea. And did something happen? They woke up and they were on a piece of wood? Or,
a bad storm just threw a few of them on a raft.
How did this I want to know more. I need to know more. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
but it is cool that the idea is that because we can now genetically test things, we couldn't do that even 50 years ago very efficiently. People thought carbon dating was a joke, but it's not. It's the real thing.
Like,
it's,
that's the devil's science.
Exactly.
Can't listen to that.
Come on, let's get into the science a little bit deeper. Let's get a little bit deeper. By the way, did you know that the iguanas floated to Fiji?
Yeah, and I mean, what blows my mind a little bit is that something large out there didn't see a delicious bait floating around and just eat them up.
Have you ever considered iguanas?
Well,
I don't want to have them for dinner.
I've seen a shark, though, and they'll eat anything, I think. I'm like you, that wouldn't have been my first choice unless I was marooned on a desert island somewhere.
Ken got an orange bird of paradise, philodendron. It's an interesting plant. It's one of those plants that shouldn't have that name, but it does. How big do they get? Depends on the size container you grow it in. In nature, they will get to be quite large. But if you grow most things like that in philodendrons, you can control their size by the size container, how much root space you give them to fill. Once they fill the root space, they're not going to get a whole lot bigger because they can't sustain it. So that's how that works. Oh, my goodness. Thank you very much. Appreciate you, Deb. That's fun. Vacation. Okay. I planted my sunflower seeds. I put more than one in there, but only one is up. Will the other come up? I don't know. You have to just wait and see. You have any suggestions about bunch peppers in a flower pot? I live in Winona. Thanks. Have a beautiful day. Thank you very much. I hope you do too.
I bunched peppers last year, a couple of different groups in flower pots.
Tell me about that.
And they worked. I mean, they were cayennes, the littles, and then I think I did some banana peppers.
Oh, fun.
They did okay. I think if I'd have given them more room, I might have gotten more peppers.
Yeah.
But I think I had enough for what I wanted. But it wasn't. It wouldn't have fed a family.
3 plants in about a 8-inch pot is certainly not too many, as long as you're fertilizing.
Well, and I think I did 6, and they bunched a bit. They were little butting heads, and by the time I realized I had, and it's a nice sized pot, but
they had their elbows out.
I had to kind of wire them up a little bit, and I think I should have done 3.
That's a good tip, because when you have too much green in the thing, they won't get thick.
Yeah,
the stems will be too wimpy, and then you do have to tie them up.
Yeah,
that's
so
very true.
I learned a lesson. I put too many in there.
So whether or not the other sunflower will come up, I can't tell you, but you only need one in a spot, so that's good that we got those up. My other suggestion about bunch peppers, as Lance says, is don't put quite as many plants in there as you think would be
right. If they grow, it becomes an issue
because they're going to get bigger, and that's really the trick to it.
Yeah,
but you do have to. Anytime you're growing vegetables in containers, you have to be aware that their needs for a fertilizer are greater than a flower usually in the same size container.
Well, if I wanted to go with something that would create not necessarily height but yield on the fertilizing side, and I know you mention this regularly, but I would want less nitrogen.
Mm-hmm. You just need enough nitrogen to get the plant going.
Okay.
After that, you're looking for all the other elements, the phosphorus and potassium, but also the minor elements to give the plant its ability to bloom and then to make a fruit or a vegetable or even a seed. Mm-hmm. It has to have all of that working for it.
Is there something you want to avoid as it gets growing, as far as the nutrition, too much nitrogen gets it spindly?
The thing to watch for is if the lower leaves are getting yellow, you do need to add more nitrogen.
Okay.
But if they're spindly, back off on the nitrogen a little bit. I think that's important. Love Winona.
The ones that make the small ones, that's the ones that I grew last year. I had a great yield out of those, but again, I planted too many. I think I had 6 in a big pot instead of probably 3, and I got a lot of peppers off of it, and they were beautiful. Mm-hmm. But again, I had some that never really seemed to get enough nutrition, and they would kind of wither away while others would do really well.
They were overcrowded.
Right.
Yeah, they were overcrowded. If they can't get the next root down, somebody else is going to take their space.
That seemed to be what was happening. Yes.
Very dynamic growth in there.
There was a competition going on. An accidental competition.
What about the kind of peppers that make different colors? Yeah, they are small.
That's the ones
lovely.
I had,
they're lovely. And most of those are edible. Some of them don't taste too great, but they're mostly edible. So hate when I say things like that. Mostly, you know. Oh my goodness. Hey, Sarah. That is Sarah and Winona. Andrea, I don't think I can share this. I'm not going to do that. Thank you, though. Appreciate hearing about it. I don't know. There's so many things in this world that I don't know.
I know quail eggs up in the north portion of the state are popular.
Very popular.
Used to see them all the time. I'd be like, wow, they look delicious.
That's a cooking competition trick. If you really think that you're good, put a quail egg on whatever it is that you're cooking, and if that comes out right, the judges are going to go, "Ooh, look what you did!"
Do like a mother-child
they're
reunion.
so tiny,
yeah,
you know.
They are. They'll do like a mother-child reunion sandwich, like
exactly.
Quail breast and fried quail egg.
Not sure if that's kosher, is it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. We have to think about that one. Pretty crazy though, but the eggs are beautiful though.
They really are.
They're such a beautiful.
They look delicious.
Spotted. Well, I have actually. Once upon a time on a dare, I ate a pickled quail egg. Only one.
One time.
Yeah, only once.
I needed one of those.
And it just didn't taste like anything. So.
Well, it was probably sitting in so much vinegar.
Pickled.
Yeah, pickled.
To within an inch of its life.
It could have lasted till the end of time.
No, just go ahead. I did not do the pig's feet that were also on the bar.
It's been a long time since I've done that, but I have. Yeah.
Good. Well,
when you reach in there and
I won't have to. I can
the red water one too, back in the day.
No.
The red feet, and they're like, why is it red? You know, it's like pistachios.
This is a terrible thing to tell you, but I'm going to anyway. When I was a bartender, in case you don't know this, when you go to a bar, part of the point of the bartender and the waiters and all that in there is to make sure that you eat a lot of salty food so you drink more. Okay? I mean, that's how you sell more booze.
Pretzels and things.
Exactly. That's how you sell more booze. And so this very popular snack at this one bar that I worked in was hot sausage and mustard. And theoretically, the mustard was yellow and the sausage was a medium sausage. But every now and then somebody would buy the actual super duper slap your mama type hot sausage and another hot mustard. You never seen people drink so much beer.
No, it goes down so easy too.
It's terrible.
At deer camp, we'll have beer and sausage and mustard.
See?
It really helps your.
It's very much that kind of snacking. You know,
good stuff.
The worst thing that ever happened to that bar was the day somebody introduced a deep fryer, because then that meant they could fry everything.
That is fun. I worked in a kitchen for a brief time, and I had more fun deep frying everything. I would take like jambalaya and ball it up, and then
Y'all always wondered who that was doing that.
Yeah, I had a blast.
He's right
man.
here.
I had so much fun frying things. Anything you could think of, you can fry it.
Well, and we do like a sunny side up egg every now and then too. Oh, brother. So appreciate that you come to the radio on today. You know, there's it's very fun for me. It tickles me to have been part of the, I don't know, excitement of rock and roll radio and talk radio, and now all these people are discovering radio. It's kind of cool.
It's radio.
We still have more ears for our advertisers. We still have more contacts for local communities as well as for the state. You know, I mean, we're lucky. We're in a big family here.
And honestly, if you look at the mediums that we have to choose from, it's the one that continues to reinvent its relevancy. And you do that by being able to be in communities, having that cup of coffee and knowing the people that listen and them knowing us. And I think that you'll never lose that in radio. As long as we're conscientious of that. It's the joy we have, right? It's connections.
Yep.
And you get that by listening in and tuning in and going to the app and so many different ways that we make it available. And I'm proud, really am, to be a part of this company, because not only do we have such a great reach, but we're also doing a lot on the digital side too, that it makes it even a bigger reach and more accessible to the people that we love to sit here and have a conversation with.
We like to do all that just well enough so you can take it for granted. You go other places, you can't find a network like us. That's for sure. Let's see, a couple of good questions. Love that citrus, by the way. What a sweet smell. There's a screen request from Northeast Mississippi. No trees, maybe up to 10-foot tall shrub, and very tight. Full sun. What can I plant? I got a couple of suggestions for you. if we want to go, if you want something that's kind of wild and has a shape that's, interesting and always going to have another bunch of thick growth coming, go for Elaeagnus. The Elaeagnus sometimes might be called Russian olive. There's different names for it, but it is Elaeagnus is the name you'll find on its label. And it is a beautiful shrub that needs a bunch of space and will get very, very thick very fast. It also tops out at about 10 feet, but it does send out canes, of course, that are the new growth of it, and they'll fall back down if you don't happen to prune them off. But the good news is that it's a really wonderful, wonderful plant. But if you want something neater, think about arborvitaes, because they're very much like soldiers. They're very, very thick and very dense, and can do a really good job at that shrub level, because they're not the tree types. Those are different plants. I would also suggest one that some folks are going to be amazed that I would suggest, and that is wintergreen boxwood. Wintergreen boxwood can be as thick as you want it to be, and it's not going to be 12 feet tall, but it'll get 8 or 9 feet tall over just a few years without any problem. Okay. Sarah from Monona. The name of the small peppers, I did not give you the name of them because there's a bunch of different varieties. You will usually see them as ornamental or some other name that tells you that they're bird's eye. It's probably the type of pepper that you're looking for, because there's small plants and small peppers, but some of them are solid purple when they ripen, and some of them are multicolored. Different varieties have different names, but you're looking for that type, okay? I hope that helps. Ed from New Hope, should I cut my yard yet? Let me get out the crystal ball. Look in here. How do you know when to cut your lawn? Well, first of all, if you have big weed problems and they have already flowered out and left you, with just the kind of crispy tops, you can certainly mow it now. If you have perennial ryegrass, you certainly need to mow it by now. I'm sure you've needed to mow yours by now.
Yeah, it's so pretty. I don't want to do it yet, but even though it's knee-high, it looks like my dogs are having fun.
Don't let it get knee-high unless your dogs are the point.
There's a trail. That's what
sure
it's like knee-high, beautiful green
We would like to see you cut it off at about 6 inches, cut half of it off, and then you'll get another bunch of new growth and have plenty to put in your compost.
You're so right, always.
But he's just being amused by it.
Oh, it's so pretty.
But I'm not going to cut the lawn itself by itself until it starts to green up. And at that point, then that's when you make the first cut. But as I say, if you have a whole bunch of weeds that have already flowered out and things are looking kind of ratty and you don't necessarily want them to seed, certainly go ahead. If you've got perennial ryegrass, certainly go ahead. And it is entirely up to you. One of the things when people get together who answer questions about stuff, whether it's cooking or gardening or whatever, when people get together to talk about what we talk about, a lot of times, you have to, part of what you have to do in this world is you have to have enough self-assurance to get up here and say something, but you also have enough self-assurance, and you must have this or you'll go away quickly, to help to stand your ground, and also to realize that other people have different opinions, and it doesn't really matter. Especially in gardening, we can do it today or we can do it next week. Most times that's not going to make a big difference. I'm going to tell you when it's important to go right ahead, and I'm also going to tell you when you have time to finish something. But if you disagree with me, you're going to prune the thing when you decide to prune it, and I'll be here to hear you tell me that it looked great anyway or that it died. So whichever you want, I'm here. I'm just here to talk about it. That's my job.
Well, and Ed was also referring to the bees.
Yep,
He said
and that's
thinking
the
about
thing.
the bees.
If your little flowers, your little winter weeds have not bloomed out yet, let them bloom out before you think about cutting it. But if they have already crisped up, and in some places they have, it's a good time to go ahead and cut it down. I noticed that the white clover that I added out into the health strip between my sidewalk and street is actually taking off, and is doing a beautiful job. Now I just have to keep it from spreading back into the lawn. So everything has to have its little designated territory. You can't have all of it. You can't have the whole space. SuperTalk.tv right now, you're looking at one of my very favorite pictures, a Fatsia and a sago palm and a lovely begonia. That was one of my very favorite scenes in the garden that I have now, in addition to the tree with all the noses on it. It's quite an interesting tree. Fun. Good morning. This is just delightful. What a great question. The orchids I rescued from the grocery store, and thank you for doing that, have produced plantlets along the flower stalk. Any thoughts about when and how to remove them would be appreciated. Drinking Saturday morning coffee with you. Thank you very much for doing that. Yes, I love when the flowers go and the orchids produce this. It'll be kind of like a little chain of things. They're very small, and what you need is to take a look at the soil that your orchid was growing in and duplicate it for the babies. But I'm going to tell you this, when you cut that stem, you're going to want to take a little piece of it so that you actually can slip that stem into this soil with the little bitty orchid plant on top of it. You don't want to try to push the orchid plant into the soil by itself. You need to give it a little bit of an anchor. And that will make all the difference in the world in the way that it roots later. Keep them in small, little bitty pots till they can root out, and then you can have each one have its own space. That's really cool. I love when things like that happen. I love when we're inspired by nature to do things that are fairly cool. For all that I talk about my squirrels, for all I say that, I'm just as glad when they're not there, but they're always there. What are they trying to eat today?
Everything.
Has the cat chased one yet? Not successfully. The squirrels have been there a long time. They laugh at the cats. They could care less. Well, there's a lot of things that the squirrels know and a lot of things that the squirrels do that we never hear about. But believe you me, they will never let us forget this one. Leaping robots. Yeah, that's right. Leaping robots are modeled on squirrel behavior, and they work. Another University of California, Berkeley, bunch of folks out there saying, well, how did this happen and how can we turn it into something else? Well, they're going to turn it into something else. What they did was, of course, they designed a one-legged robot with the balance ability and the leg biomechanics to correct for, well, let's face it, overshooting and undershooting the thing they're trying to land on, because that is the problem, especially when the robot costs as much as it costs. So they have designed robots that crawl and swim and fly, and of course ones that slither, but no robot holds a candle to the way the squirrel can. This is today's word, parkour. I love that word. Through the thicket of branches, leap across perilous gaps, and frankly, land on something that doesn't look like it could even hold them up. Something really flimsy. That's what they've done. The studies of the biomechanics, they have a hopping robot. This thing can stick landings on narrow perches, and that's going to be obviously very helpful for a lot of access for things that they need to deliver something to and need to do it in a robot. You can't get the squirrels to cooperate, so you have to build a robot. That's what they're doing.
Why don't we just invent like squirrel hand gloves? I've watched them climb everything on the side from fairly slick concrete to pea graveled everything. I just want like a arm sleeve that has the squirrel hand. You are now recalling
David Letterman's climbing the wall sketches where they put the Velcro.
I just want to naturally do it too, like they do. They move around like so cool and clean on everything.
Yeah, you know why? Because they've been doing this for a long time. They're better at it than we are. I'm famous for yelling at the squirrels in my yard when they eat things I don't like them to eat, and they're eyeing up the blueberry flowers already. But
you know it.
So they have to fight the birds for that, and all of them have to fight me because I wake up before dawn, so they don't stand a chance. I have had many a morning, very pleasant morning, with picking blueberries in my back garden and being yelled at by birds and squirrels. I enjoy it. I feel like I'm getting the edge on them.
Yeah, you got up before them?
For once. Just that one time.
And it's yours.
The rest of the time,
share
it's all
when you're not out there. But when it's your time to pick, they've got to get out the way. And I was so proud of Hawk the other day. He actually did catch a bird.
My goodness.
Yeah, the camouflage and everything works, his spottedness, and he got it. But he was so weirded out by actually catching one, he didn't know he was going to do this. So it kind of got out, and he was like, what happened?
Surprise.
Yeah, and he's been on one. The birds and he have a nice little game going on. So it's like you and the squirrels and birds with the blueberries.
Yep. Got to yell at them a little bit.
Mike was referring to the quail eggs. Back, he used to raise them.
Ah.
And he said around Halloween he could really scare some folks and paint some eyeballs on them. And then,
I love that.
The Cajun ones are good.
I love that.
Like, where are you getting quail eggs? So I know exactly where he lives. I was like, that's the hotbed of quail eggs. I mean, he's in the heartland.
Oh my goodness! Oh, how nice! Sarah Bernhardt, peonies are popping, or peonies if you want to call them peonies. My friend was planting cleomes this week, and it reminded me of how people have argued for years about how those things are pronounced, but we know what they are, so we don't worry about that part of it. We just enjoy the fact that they're sprouting. Amended the soil with manure and calcium, and this has been 4 years with no blooms. Well, manure and calcium is good, but we need some flower fertilizer in this thing. Any other suggestions on soil amending? Yes. Shannon in the Oak Grove area by Hattiesburg. This Sarah Bernhardt will bloom in your area, and I think that's wonderful. What we need to get for them this year, though, is some flower fertilizer, because if they're 4 years old and they're putting on these beautiful leaves but not able to bloom, I think they're probably a little too lush. You don't want to not feed them nitrogen, but I think you've got plenty of that. So get a flower-forming fertilizer and add that to your regime. Beautiful plants. Really, really looking good. That's nice. That's wonderful. Let's see, we talked about that. Okay. To look and see. Y'all send wonderful pictures, and sometimes I can tell which ones are current and which ones are not.
Before we go to break, now that we're in that time of the year where growing grass for us guys is an important thing in the yard, while you've had the winter and it's ugly, and you want to get that yard really looking good. You've
seen my lawn with all the onions on it, but they're fake onions. That's the worst part. I can't even pull them up and do anything with them.
How do we get that yard healthy for when it does start rolling and looking good?
It really is a matter of assessing your circumstances. If you've got areas that stay wet or you've got areas that stay dry, for example, if you have a sidewalk next to your lawn and the area along the sidewalk consistently stays much drier and doesn't grow really well, turn over a shovel of it. You've probably got white grub worms in there, because that's where they congregate. They spend the winter next to whatever's warm, and in this case it's the concrete sidewalk that has kept their space warm. So you look for that kind of stuff. Look for where the winter weeds are. If there's, for example, if you're getting all of the hen and chicks, all of the hen bit, not hen and chicks. If you're getting all the hen bit that you can stand, the little purple thing, you probably got a crowding problem. Your lawn's, the hen bit's getting more than it should be. So you may want to think about getting some of that out of there so you can dry out the turf so that it can be pretty. But after that, it's just getting it to green up and giving it a little bit of fertilizer and mowing it regularly. Don't let it get a foot tall. I know I'm crazy. So are you. We'll be back.
You know, there's some French bread getting eaten down there.
Every day.
It's a good day for it. Butter and bread.
I'm telling you.
Maybe a little gumbo. Perfect weather for that.
If I was a better person, I would have learned how to master all of that a long time ago. As it is, I just have to appreciate other people who can.
Yeah, I took up a lot of time throwing a ball. I probably should have learned to serenade better.
Or at least make baguettes.
That too, yeah, both. If I could make a baguette and serenade, man.
Look out, you'd be dangerous. You would be dangerous.
Be worldwide.
Oh, my goodness. How fun. Today is Puppetry Day, friends. If you have never appreciated puppetry, or if they freak you out, I encourage you to get to know some so that they don't. I know there are people who are afraid of puppet shows, but there's not really anything to be afraid of.
I like the Team America puppets. Those are awesome, or whatever you call that.
I'm all about the Muppets myself.
I love Muppets. I grew up on that, Sesame Street and all that.
But it's a way of expressing, and you listen to me, you'd think I studied everything in college. I did. I studied puppetry and storytelling 2 semesters.
You have the one where you stick your hand in the sock, basically, and work it that way. Mm-hmm. You also have the one where you're above it and you...
Marionettes.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was
There's hand puppets, there's marionettes, there's shadow puppets.
French words are everywhere today.
That's right. I did not ever imagine that I could handle a marionette, but it sure is impressive to watch people do that and to work on their mechanics and things. But we had to do paper mache heads and make animals.
Didn't Mr. Rogers have the marionette type with the horse and the little?
He
thing?
had the puppet shows with. He had some motion and some that was not.
His birthday would have been the other day. I think it was Thursday.
Yeah. Well, he's somebody that definitely helped to move that all forward.
Jim Henson,
Bill Baird, Jim Henson. You know, we've had some magnificent people that have really taught us how to tell a story in many different ways.
I had the opportunity and good fortune to come across a movie that was about the early days of Saturday Night Live. And Jim Henson was part of that crew. Mm-hmm. And it was like the first show that they were showing behind the scenes leading up to the first show and how crazy and hectic it was. But the person who played Jim Henson, I mean, every time he came on, I laughed and laughed because he was such out of the element of those guys with Chevy Chase and Belushi and all that. But watching the interaction and how the puppet master over here with this very different mindset and morals and ethical values was thrown into the mix with these lunatics that were creating cutting-edge comedy and it was just something really interesting.
They had ethics and values. They appreciated a good puppet, but on the other hand, they told their stories in different ways.
No, that's what I mean. Like the way he went about everything was so different, and it was fun watching those two totally diametrically opposite personality groups get together and create something. But Henson was a hoot in those early years with working in that way. You're thinking a puppet show on Saturday Night Live. Yeah, I mean it was.
Sure.
Yeah, it was really cool though. If you haven't seen that, I can't remember the movie name.
If you've never watched the Muppet Show, go back and watch it.
Fraggle Rock, I loved it.
Some of the best stuff in the world.
I loved Fraggle Rock as a kid.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, all of it's
rats.
fun. All of it's fun. Sandra has such a good question, and I hate to say, but I don't have an answer for it. What do you do about pollen this time of year?
Embrace it.
People say go on vacation.
Make a soup.
Yard is full of pine trees. Yeah, everything's yellow, and even your shoes are covered.
My boots
She's right. She's absolutely right. Yeah, boots are You can covered. Hear it in my throat, and I'm not sick. I just walked outdoors this morning. That's all it takes.
Everybody's just gotten over the croup and crud.
The saddest thing for me are the mornings. It has poured down rain, and the next morning my car looks fine. And by 11 o'clock that morning, it was yellow again. I was like, come on, y'all. This is supposed to help.
How long does it last?
Well, pollen shed really does. It does depend on how often it rains. There's big weather coming through central and south Mississippi Sunday night. Probably going to take most of the rest of it out that's in bloom now. But then after that, the cat can start falling off the oak trees and you're on your way to the next. But the Bradford pear and all of that has been blooming in central Mississippi and the pine trees and whatnot, they'll be done in a few days. There's not really an answer to what to do about it.
Right. It just kind of embrace it and go along with it.
Have we had the last frost? These I need the magic 8-ball for all of it.
I will bring it next time.
It depends on where you are. If you are Hattiesburg South, I'm confident that, you have seen your last frost. That's not to say you can't have a chilly night, but I don't think there would be a frost. I don't even think, and I'll be crazy, but I don't think central Mississippi will see, Zone 8 will see another frost, but there still might be a couple of nights chilly enough to give you a problem with some things. So y'all in Corinth and whatnot, I think you probably got at least one more little dip. Just from looking at the way that the weather is running, we're a bigger state than most of the places in the South, so we actually have 3 separate weather worlds. And as a result, the folks in Tennessee and up that way grab our northern counties and take them into that chill. So I think that we will certainly see blackberry winter somewhere. Just depends on where. That last bite of cold. But there's no good answer. It's like pollen. I can tell you what I think. I can tell you what I do, but it's just there.
I'm with you 100% on the weather, the way the patterns look. You could see the northern portion, especially up in the hill country, get something. I would be surprised if we got under 35.
And he actually does this.
Yeah,
I'm telling you what I read because I can't help but
the
share.
Delta is the one that's kind of an anomaly because you get such windy conditions that have a tendency that if it's around 34, 35, it may get down there. But I haven't seen any projections out a week or two that say, well, we're about to get a freeze.
No.
But, yeah, I'm with you on that northern corridor.
Y'all, I have a question just to finish us up today. Why don't we remember being a baby? Now, there are people who would say it's because it's too traumatic. There are people that would say it's because we have other... The theory has been, though, that the hippocampus doesn't develop, and that's where memory is stored. Well, turns out that's not quite it. I love it when we have to go back and relearn something else, or when we learn something and turns out it was true. Memories can be encoded in our brains in the first years of life, and the researchers are now looking at what happens over time so that some people remember them and some do not. In the study, researchers showed infants new images that they had not seen and later tested them to see whether they remembered them. When an infant's hippocampus was more, in other words, they put the things, they didn't hurt the baby, but they put the things on your head and measure the activity in your brain. And when the hippocampus was more active upon seeing an image, they were more likely to recognize it the second time and have a familiarity with it. So the hippocampus is developing. I tend to think there's just so much input. When an infant arrives here, you got to learn so much stuff that first couple of years just in order to survive. I can see why you don't necessarily remember that Grandma leaned over the cradle on day 3 and said, "Hey, baby, I love you." You're not going to remember everything. Hopefully, you're going to remember who's important and where the food comes from and all of those kinds of things. But you might remember the kitten that cuddled up with you, or any of those stuff. I know. Go just be my grandmother and tell me that you shouldn't have cats around babies because they'll eat the air from them or something. That's not true. There's different problems. But we're going to leave those for another day. Yes, the classic ending for this day is how to prune a Bradford pear with a chainsaw at ground level. See y'all next week.